Hi all, and welcome to another AST Arsenal Supporters Trust event on this very warm day. I did think numbers might start to drop off today with the nice weather, but I'm glad to see we've got lots and lots of members joining us today, so welcome. As always, welcome to members who have been with us for a while, been with us throughout this kind of lockdown pandemic journey. Of course, this is our 18th, I think, virtual event. So we've certainly had a few. Welcome to all new members who have joined us recently. So whether this is your first, your second, or third meeting, welcome. A special thanks to all of our overseas members as well that have joined. So today will be a little bit different to the previous meetings. With the previous meetings, there's been a lot to cover from us. So it's been more of a briefing. Today we've got two great guests. We will talk a little bit more about the actual football on the pitch. We'd like to get lots of questions in, audience participation, and you can do that in two ways. There is a Q&A function that you can ask your questions to, and we'll try and get through as many as we can with Adrian and Charles. And also you can raise your hand. So a little bit later on, I will get people to raise their hand and come in, because it is nice to hear sort of other voices and stuff like that. We have got a few sort of AST matters that we're going to kind of get through first, and then we'll bring our two guests in. So if I welcome Nigel, who's going to give us a bit of a financial update. I will just share my screen, Nigel, for your slides. Welcome.
Thanks, Hakel. Good evening, everyone, or morning or night, depending on where you are. Right, so this is a busy slide, as you can see. And what's the purpose of putting this up? I thought it'd be
Nigel, if I just get you to hide your camera, just because you block that last bit of the table.
Okay, thanks, Hakel. A lot of numbers on here, not going to go through them all, but I thought it was just interesting to look at some of the trends of what's happened here. So if we take the first column, the 16-17 year, that was our last year in the Champions League, round of 16, Bayern Munich. I think you can remember the 5-1, 5-1, 10-2 aggregate in there. Revenues of 424 million, wages of 200 million, and keep dropping down that line, that column. You can see the debt outstanding at the time was 200 million, and we had cash of 180. If we take that through to the 1920 actual, so that was a slightly truncated COVID year. These are the figures which have been published, so this is all fact again. You can see that the revenue's down by 80 million. Several factors there. A little bit of TV gate receipts off because we missed those last few games. There were some refunds of matches which we didn't have, but the big difference there is television money. So prior to back in 16-17, we were getting 200 million of TV money. In 1920, it was closer to 120 million. Some of that was because of the deferral of the TV money because of the truncated season, but a big factor is Champions League. The wages, you can see there, 3 consecutive years we've had some payoff money. So people talks about what happens at Chelsea and the amount of money they've paid off. We've had exceptional costs in 17-18, 18-19 and 19-20 for retrenching staff. What's happened to the debt? So if we look at the third row from the bottom there, going down nicely, 200, 192, 184, 175. That was the long-term stadium debt. And you can see where we estimate we are now. We're about 350. And what's happened there? So you may recall that the owner refinanced the stadium debt, which did free up some cash, which was trapped in some security accounts there. That money is now owed by the club to KSE UK Inc., which is the owner of Arsenal. That's the Delaware registered company. And also, we had the Bank of England loan, which was 120 million, which just before the end of May, which is the financial year end, was refinanced by Barclays. Barclays have now taken security over everything which moves and doesn't move at Arsenal, including property, future TV rights, etc., etc. Interestingly, the TV rights that they have security over is only for until the end of the 21-22 season, which sort of indicates it's a relatively short-term loan, maybe another 12 to 18 months, but we're waiting for further details. And then you can see money we owe on players who are already on the books. We currently owe about £160 million in instalment payments. It's the way you buy players. When you're paying £72 million for Pepe, it doesn't all get paid up front. Although, of course, you will remember that Thomas Partey was all paid up front. That was part of the deal with the release clause. So that came from the refinancing. Akil, can I have the next slide, please? So some of the issues, the debt level now is close to 500 million. The majority of it is to the parent company, KSA UK Inc. And then we have the money which will be owed to Barclays. Prior to the Bank of England loan, Barclays had also made a loan to Arsenal, which was 80% guaranteed by the UK government. That was one of those business interruption loans. Got no details of that, I'm afraid. In addition, this is not Arsenal debt, this is KSE UK debts. They borrowed £500 million from Deutsche Bank when it was buying the final 33% of Arsenal, mainly from Usmanov, in August 2018. That loan was guaranteed by his wife, Mrs. Kroenke, part of the Walmart dynasty. Why have I put that up there? We quite expect that the money that has come to Arsenal for the stadium refinancing has been provided by Deutsche Bank to KSC and then on lent to Arsenal. So that 500 million owed by KSC to Deutsche is probably closer to 750 now, which may be an indication of why Barclays had to step up for the Bank of England repayment, because maybe there's a limit to how far Deutsche were willing to go. Some people think the wage bill was high considering where we are and the football which is being produced. It is the 5th highest in the Premier League. There's a very strong correlation between what you pay in wages and the position you end up. If we were finishing 4th, we would be above where our ranking would indicate. But we are 100 million below Liverpool. That's a huge gulf. Liverpool are the one above us. I mean, don't even talk about City and United. There are fines imminent from UEFA and Premier League for the disgrace of the Super League. KSC has given some sort of verbal indication that they will be covering those themselves, but in reality, you know where they will come back. So how to rebuild the squad? I know Adrian and Charles will be talking about what's needed. I mean, how can it be done? There will be some money there, will be loan money, predominantly from Barclays. Could there be a capital injection, i.e. some more equity, or could you bring someone in as a third-party equity participant? So, plenty of challenges. The lack of Europe for next season will create a £30 million shortfall, but there'll be less games and maybe a smaller squad. So thank you, Akil. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat and I'll try and answer them as we go along. Thanks.
Thanks, Nigel. And as he says, he's sticking around, so feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A and Nigel can answer them sort of directly to you. So thanks for that, Nigel. I'm going to welcome Tim just to give a bit of an update on the government fan-led review, which is ongoing. So we've obviously talked a lot about this, Tim, but firstly, for I guess new members, what is this review and how did it start? And secondly, where are we in that process?
This is a review the government expedited into football and its governance following the shameful actions of the Super League and a realisation that football couldn't carry on as it is. So that review has been set up. Tracy Crouch, former sports minister, Member of Parliament, is leading the review and terms of reference have been published. Anyone who's interested in that can see those in our recent newsletters. Last week, the AST was asked to be the first supporters trust to give some preliminary evidence to the review. That was quite a boost for us. I think the people organising the review felt that we have a very clear message and have professionally conveyed that. And so myself, you were there, Akil, Glyn Taylor and Chloe last week with Tracy Crouch. And we just talked through the key points. I think everybody's seen these. We'd like to see supporter shareholders back at Arsenal, the custodianship, the checks and balances that come with being an equity holder. We think independent board directors would really strengthen the governance. Some golden share voting rights are important, not just at Arsenal, but at all clubs. But there must be genuine supporter engagement with the owner and the board. Things like an AGM must return. But overall, the government needs to look at some form of independent regulation for football. So whatever the laws and rules are in place, you need the confidence that they're effectively and swiftly introduced. And really just a call for more openness, honesty and transparency. You know, I'm taking looking at those figures Nigel went through, that there's 350 to 500 million pound of debt on Arsenal, but at the moment we have no visibility of what that debt costs, how it's serviced, who it has to be repaid to. And I mean, you know, Arsenal is a part of the community. It's a social asset. It's all something we're a part of, and we want to be involved in that in more detail. So what happens next? Well, we now have to give written evidence to Tracy Crouch's review, and we'll probably also appear at another section as part of a Premier League panel. But what's most important for everybody on this call now, and all the other AST members, is we've devised a short survey, which we'll send to you in the next 48 hours, the next newsletter you'll receive. Please look out for the survey. And please put your comments not only to our questions, but there's a box at the end of the survey where you can write a message to the government review. And what we will do, we will collate all of those into an appendix report and submit them along with our evidence to the government. So the AST is about its members having a voice, everybody having a say. You will get the survey in the next 24 hours. Please fill it in. Please tell us what you think, and we'll give it to the politicians and hope it influences the outcome.
Perfect. Cool. Thanks, Tim. That's very efficient. If there are any questions about the government fan-led review, then please do pop them in the Q&A, and Tim will be able to answer them sort of backstage. I want to welcome our sort of main guests now to the virtual stage, I guess. So that's Charles Watts from Goal and Adrian Clarke from sort of various podcasts, but of course the Breakdown Show on Arsenal.com. So, gentlemen, welcome. How are you, Adrian?
Evening.
You well?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me back. Yeah, no, all good. Just looking forward to a break, and finally getting involved in or analysing some matches that actually matter. It was just strange sensation at the end of that season to sort of be breaking down games where really there wasn't too much on it. It was not good. So hoping that August comes around quickly.
Yeah, got to say, Adrian, you're actually back by popular demand. We have had members really enjoy your insight and your views. So that's
very nice
to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, very nice.
And Charles, we obviously have thought we'll get you in because we want our members to see you in action too. So Charles, how's everything going? How are you? And I guess for you, how's that journey been covering games and stuff like that? And this is something we've asked everyone, but just how was it for you in the last sort of 18 months?
Hi everyone. How was it? It's tough to really sum up how it was, to be honest. It was it kind of became the norm, and I think going to the Brighton game at the end of the season and having just 10,000 fans in there, you just suddenly realised exactly what you'd been missing. I mean, even when you were going to those matches, you knew you were missing something. Obviously, the fans, which make it everything, but just suddenly going there with just 10,000 in, and you think, oh my God, I've just missed this so much. It makes it all, I think you become accustomed to it. It was almost like just watching training games week in, week out. And it just sucked the life and soul out of it, really. It's been a really difficult season to cover. I mean, it hasn't helped that Arsenal being rubbish for the majority of it as well. But I'm just glad we've put this one behind us now. I came away from that Brighton game just feeling good about it. The fact that the season was over, I was happy with that, but just knowing what was to come next season, you just got a little taste of it there against Brighton. And I just can't wait to get back to that normality that we all love and we all, why we go to football week in, week out.
Absolutely. So Adrian, sort of thinking about the season, obviously it is now over for clubs anyway, domestic clubs. Arsenal finished 8th, same place as they finished last season, to be fair. But obviously there was a slightly different ending in terms of the FA Cup. It as you said, the games didn't matter at the end, and they were a little bit strange. We did have a sniff, let's be fair, to finish above Spurs and get into the Europa Conference. Not that I'm not sure anyone actually wanted to be in there, but there was a little bit in us with 20 minutes to go on that last day of the season, thinking we could be chanting it happened again in a little while. It wasn't to be. But how would you rate this season? And I mean, the real question is how bad was it? But let's not say that.
Well, it's desperately disappointing, wasn't it? I don't think we can shy away from that. The points tally is way below what we would expect. I think ahead of this season, I think it was always going to be tough to get top 4, but we certainly thought we would be much closer. And I think as it turned out this season, the door was a little bit ajar for somebody to go in and sort of break up that new monopoly, so to speak. We got better in some aspects. I mean, I was looking at some of the stats earlier. In terms of shots faced, we were the 5th fewest this season. So we didn't face too many shots. The previous year, we were 16th. So that equates to about 140 fewer shots that we faced. So Bernd Leno, for example, was the busiest goalkeeper the previous season. This time round, there were only 4 keepers that had less to do than Bernd Leno. So in terms of our discipline and our shape and being harder to play against or create chances against, we are getting better. That much is obvious, that we can see that with our eyes. And we have become more creative, but we were starting at a very low base. I think the previous season, we were sort of average. We were ranked around 14th, 15th in most of the creative categories. We've gone up to mid-table levels, 9th, 10th, 11th. It's not good enough. There's a lot of work to be done. But I think during the second half of the season, we saw sort of some green shoots of recovery there, didn't we, with Saka and Smith Rowe and obviously the loan of Ødegaard. I think that definitely had an impact. Pepe's form picked up. So we got better in that regard from January onwards. But ultimately, it was poor by Arsenal standards. The standards have dropped, too far, and we've got to get them back up.
Absolutely. That's why we've got you, Adrian, just to find a positive somewhere, and that fewer shots, we'll take that right now. We'll come back to the individual players, Adrian, in a little while. But Charles, what was your sort of view? I presume it's very similar to Adrian, but
Yeah, it is very similar. I mean, there's no doubt that we did improve after December, after Christmas. I remember coming back from the Everton game at Goodison on December 19th, I think it was, after the 2-1 defeat, and I think it was 4 points above relegation zone at the moment. At that point, it was 7 defeats in 10 in the Premier League, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is actually going to be a relegation dogfight this season. You saw no real signs to suggest it wasn't, and then the Chelsea game comes around on Boxing Day. Arteta goes 4-2-3-1, brings Smith Rowe in, plays the number 10 that he hadn't been playing for the first half of the season, and things changed. I mean, you look at the numbers in the second half of the season, they do speak for themselves. I mean, I think everyone's seen it now. Arsenal was sort of second behind any City in terms of points gained from Christmas, scored, I think, third amount of goals, conceded third least amount of goals. So the numbers suggest they were on an upward trajectory, and the performances were as well, because I think the dark days between November and December, they were very, very dark. So I think there are signs of encouragement for next season, but I don't think you can't forget what happened in that first half of the season as well. And I think it's just another sign of what's to come this summer. Really, it's pretty clear that a massive, massive overhaul is needed at Arsenal, or a continued overhaul, because we've seen it over the last few windows already. But there's plenty more that needs to be done to get this team moving in the right direction again. And I think, I think we're certainly going to see that this summer.
And Adrian, we've had a question from Mutta, who I was going to ask something very similar. But I mean, what happened between sort of October and December? Charles talks about that Everton game, because obviously after that we had the Boxing Day and it turned around. But what happened? Was it just confidence shot? Was it the coaching? Was it what was it? In your opinion?
Look, I wish I knew. I've kind of tried to erase it from my memory because it was so bad. It was so pitiful, wasn't it? I mean, confidence was the lowest I've seen of any Arsenal team since I've got back involved, with analysing the performances. It was really, bad in terms of our passing, our movement, all the basics. We looked edgy on. Obviously, we didn't settle on the system, chopping and changing there, changing personnel frequently. I do feel that it was never going to be helpful having a number of players, senior players, not in the squad. I'm talking about Özil and Socrates, and obviously others that were there but never really going to get a game. And I feel that maybe the training ground environment or the dressing room environment certainly improved once everybody was involved from January onwards. It felt as if everyone was pulling in that same direction, and the body language was better. There was more sharpness. There was, everything had a bit more zip. But a lot of that, I think, the credit has to go to the younger guys for basically taking responsibility and lifting it, just dragging everybody with them from sort of Christmas onward. I mean, I think the Chelsea game was a huge one, wasn't it? Where we beat Chelsea and it was an uplifting performance. And that from then on, we were a different team. But why was it so bad? It's hard to put your finger on it. But when you start losing games, really bad games, especially at home, then confidence drains, and it takes inner resolve, and it takes leadership. And I have to say that maybe Mikel didn't have his best period there in terms of clarity of message, and the senior players as well. The body language was quite negative. It actually took Xhaka and Smith Rowe and one or two others to actually just get them out of it, and then they went, and then we saw, that they're good players. They should never have been in that position.
Yeah, that was my one positive, by the way, doing the double over the champions of Europe. It hurts me to say that, champions of Europe, but that's a very small positive there. Charles, I mean, we talked about that period between October and December, obviously, as being just erasing it from our memories. But as someone who was actually at games, sort of reporting on Arsenal, what was it like being there? What were Arsenal quieter in those periods? Did they look like they were shot of confidence? And then equally, post kind of Chelsea, Boxing Day, did you feel like it changed in the squad and they believed a little bit more in the impact of the youngsters and just someone who, because none of us have been in the grounds, and you just get a sense of it when you're in the ground?
I think there was a slight sense of it. It wasn't a massive sea change, I have to admit, in terms of body language, or they were still always very voiceful, especially the usual suspects, your Granit Xhakas and players like that. But I think confidence was absolutely shot. You can't underestimate the importance of confidence in football. And it was that run, it was just shot. I mean, they couldn't even create a chance. So that was why they were losing games, because they were just creating one or two half chances of games at a time. And it wasn't like they were being opened up defensively during that time. They weren't. It's just the fact they weren't scoring, and then they get caught by the odd goal, and because you're not going to go out at the other end and score yourselves, and then you're in trouble. And I think that was the main difference, the confidence. Well, then Adrian touched on it there as well. I think the key thing was the January transfer window as well, and Edu doing what he needed to do in terms of getting players out who needed to go out, because there is nothing good was going to come from having big key players, big earners not playing and not even having a chance to play in football. And that's just going to cause issues behind the scenes. Mikel's touched on it as well plenty of times without really saying it, out and out. But even it was only a couple of weeks ago, didn't he? He said that people were trying to hurt the club from the inside, and they're not at the club anymore. I think it doesn't take too much to work out exactly what he's talking about there. So I think that January was absolutely massive. Getting a little bit of momentum ahead of January, then clearing out the squad in January and carrying it on. You could certainly tell that the players were enjoying it a little bit more. There's more smiles on the faces, but I wouldn't say there was a difference in terms of actually being at the game, really noticing everything. I mean, Arteta drowns everyone out anyway. You can't hear anything but Arteta when you're at these matches in these 5 different languages barking instructions, and that certainly didn't change between our first half of the season and the second half of the season.
Can I just add, actually, I think when confidence is low, the best way to get yourself out of it is to go back to the basics. Do the basics the best that you can do them, and that's in essence being organised, running running hard and yeah, just pressing and getting yourself going. Make those short passes, 5, 10, 15 yards. Don't overcomplicate it. And I think one problem with Arsenal throughout this season is that I think we've maybe overcomplicated our approach in possession, and perhaps we just stripped it back a little bit from late December onwards, and we were a little bit more direct. There were still games where we weren't, but that, I think, is the key for success moving forwards from where we are now, and what we'll be able to do in the transfer market. We've got to become athletic, hardworking, disciplined. We've got to do all of those things better than the other teams, and then hope that our quality will win us matches.
And Charles, I mean, obviously, you know, the AST with sort of Nigel, who's just there, and also Simon, who's a member, does, you know, lots of financial sort of analysis and stuff like that. But a question we have had in from sort of Craig is about kind of funds and stuff like that. Do you think, I mean, what are you hearing with, you know, in the fans forum after the Super League? I think Josh Kroenke was asked about, will KSE invest? You know, he said yes, but does that mean loans? We don't know. There's lots of question marks. I think Craig's specific question was, will kind of Daniel X interest make the Kroenkes maybe not want to invest and things like that? But what have you heard? What do you think is going to happen? Because as Nigel showed on his table, things do look a little bit bleak if you are just, you know, running a self-sustainable kind of club. But what have you heard there?
I think it's going to be a busy summer. I think we're going to see a lot happening at Arsenal. If you're asking me, do I think the Kroenkes are going to invest their own money? Then no, not at all. They might find funds that Arsenal can use, like they did recently with obviously Nicolas Pepe and then Thomas Partey as well. But that's not coming out of Stan Kroenke's pocket. So they might find a way of freeing up this money, like you said, loans. The Barclays loan, you know, that's just happened. That might allow Arsenal to do a little bit more. But I think also what the money you're going to hopefully bring in from a few players, because Arsenal's certainly going to make some sales, and they'll hopefully, for the club's sake, be quite significant ones. They've got some big decisions to make with some players. You look at Joe Willock right now, that's going to be a massive decision in the summer. Should a decent offer come in, and you think there will be offers for Joe Willock, I think that's clear given the way he ended last season with Newcastle. Newcastle will certainly try, but word up in Newcastle is it'll be about 20 million, and I'm not sure that'll be enough for Arsenal to do business now. But if you can get a little bit more than that, then they're going to have a big decision to make on him. And then you look at Granit Xhaka, that's something that could well happen relatively quickly if Arsenal and Roma can agree a fee for him. And there's other players as well. Bernd Leno, not certain, but there's a possibility that someone like Bernd Leno could go. Hector Bellerin, you know, even Alexander Lacazette.
Let me just stop you on a bit, because we're going to spend a bit more time focusing on a few of them. But we have had a question from Pat, who pre-submitted it, and he's just put it in the Q&A. Obviously, I think you were one of the first to break a story about the Ajax keeper. And then obviously with the Leno noises about him kind of potentially being open to a move. What are you hearing there? Do you think Arsenal are open to it? I mean, remember this time last year, Arsenal made a massive call by letting Emi Martinez. I mean, Adrian smiles there because we spent about 20 minutes talking about Martinez and Leno before around the cup final. But I mean, what's your view there? What have you heard? And I guess ultimately, what do you think will happen?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they do something with the goalkeepers this summer. Like you said there, Andre Onana is one of the keepers they're looking at. And the situation with Leno, I'm not sure it's a case of Arsenal being open to it, but he's only got 2 years left on his contract this summer. And at the moment, it doesn't seem like there's a real desperation to go into talks about a new one. And so Arsenal have got to start putting plans into action. And there are goalkeepers there, you know, very much like David Raya at Brentford. I think that might be more difficult now. Brentford have come up, and Onana is a very, you know, good young goalkeeper who's obviously got an issue at the moment with the doping ban, but he's only got a year left on his contract at Ajax. There could be a good deal done for him, and so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see something happen with the goalkeepers. It's going to be a big decision to make. Leno he's not pushing to leave, or I've not heard that he's pushing to leave. But if you've only got 2 years left on a contract, there's no real talks happening about extending that. Then, you know, you've got to start looking elsewhere. And it would, if a decent offer came in for Leno this summer and Arsenal could get something done for Onana, then it wouldn't at all surprise me if we see that. It's a tough one though. I think before we came on, we were talking about it, and Arsenal have got so much to do this summer, so much in so many areas. Having to sort out your number one goalkeeper as well was probably something they weren't planning on only a few months ago, especially when they made the call to let Emi go last summer. And it's a problem they could probably do without, but it's the way of the world at the moment, and it's just another thing that's going to be on Edu's very, very long list.
Yeah. And Adrian, I know you've done some stuff recently about sort of players and analysing players, but as we do start to look at the squad for next year or next season, who are the players that are definitely in there who have to stay regardless of what? And I guess who we're building the team around. I mean, there has been a question from Kieran who says, apart from Saka and Smith Rowe, who else kind of is there?
Yeah, it's a good question. Just quickly on Leno, sorting out a new goalkeeper would be way down my to-do list personally, but I do understand that you might have to move when the contracts are coming down, and I do understand Arsenal maybe not being in a rush to renew that contract. I think looking back, Emi Martinez in the team of the season, maybe they would have sold Bernd Leno instead of Emi, but there you go. In terms of must build the team around at the back, Kieran Tierney is the obvious one. Is the standout. I don't think any of the centre halves can be sure of starting next season. Obviously, we're all excited to see William Saliba, and I'd love to see him being given an extended run, in the team from the start of the campaign. But as of the rest of them, they've all had, checkered campaigns, haven't they? Gabriel, blistering start, but did start to make a lot of mistakes. You can go through all of them and say, well, are they nailed on starters? And I'd say no. And we certainly need a new right back, and I think we need a new centre half to replace David Luiz, someone who can distribute the ball really well from the back, because that's what we'll miss from David Luiz. He started a lot of attacks with accurate long passes, so we need someone who can defend, someone who's quick, but also someone that can pass. So Tierney's a must stay. Obviously Saka. Where's he going to play? I think that's the big question mark. We know he can play anywhere. Personally, I think inside off the left is probably best with Tierney flying outside, but he can operate anywhere. Thomas Partey is a definite to stick with. Obviously underwhelmed a little bit compared to what we expected of him, but we saw glimpses, I think, of a real class player, and with a proper pre-season, no injuries. And a regular partner. Let's be honest, he didn't have a regular partner in the centre of midfield. It's about partnerships, I think, this summer. Choose them and let them develop. We haven't had that at centre half, haven't had it in forward areas, haven't had it with full-backs and wingers. I think that's really, really important. So Thomas Partey, Smith Rowe, clearly fantastic. He might have some sub-appearances, but he's an absolute fixture. He's been brilliant. I would keep Lacazette. I think Lacazette should stay. You look at the raw number. I look with my eyes, and I thought Lacazette had a good season. A lot of fans were on his back for missing chances. His conversion rate was among the best of the leading marksmen in the Premier League. He was pretty lethal, and had he started more matches and not been on the bench as often, he could have been closer, to the big boys at the top of the Golden Boot race potentially. And obviously that's an issue, isn't it, with Lacazette and Aubameyang effectively playing for the same role. I'm not going to include Aubameyang in the must keeps, because I think there has to be a question there because of his performance levels over the last 12 months. Pepe for sure, keep and use more in the games against non-Big Six teams. He should start every time because he's a flat track bully. Give him the ball. He runs at players. He gets his shots away. He's one of the team's most lethal finishers. He's had more direct goal involvements than anyone. And he spent a lot of the time on the bench last season as well. He's got in product. And I think even though he'll frustrate you and he'll give the ball away and he'll lose it, and some games he'll be awful, he's worth persisting with because he's always got goals in him. And then, Martinelli, I think you stick with. Obviously, maybe not in the starting 11, but he's a player that we need to keep in the building and develop and improve. But as for everybody else, I think there are question marks there, and there are some decisions to be made. So yeah, it's quite a short list.
Yeah. Well,
but that's my honest opinion.
I started writing notes for questions to come back on, but you've thrown a lot of information at me there, so I just have to sort of analyze it myself. But Charles, coming to you, I mean, we talked a little bit about outgoings. Obviously, we've talked about. I mean, we started this kind of event with Nigel talking about the figures and it looking quite bleak. You've kind of continued that by saying, maybe loans and stuff like that, not maybe proper investment. So it does beg the question that Arsenal probably do need to be quite smart, do need to raise funds as well. So who are the players you're looking at? So we've mentioned Granit Xhaka as one, being, I don't know who would want to play for Jose Mourinho, by the way, but hey, it's another thing. But you talked about Hector Bellerin, Lacazette, Willock, obviously. Now, how likely do you think they are to go? Do you think Bellerin will go? Do you think Lacazette will go? And then, I guess players like Rhys Nelson and stuff like that, they're probably, you would think he would go as well. And Eddie Nketiah, maybe?
Yeah, well, I think Hector will definitely go. Obviously, you've got to find someone who's going to take him at the moment. But, Hector very nearly went last year. He didn't. He stayed for another season. It didn't quite work out this season. He lost his place by the end of it. And I think everyone was just gearing up for the departure by the end of the season. He'll go. I know that he's been talking with Real Betis, but again, this is an issue that Arsenal are going to face this summer, and they faced it last summer as well, because it's very hard to shift a lot of these players. Betis have got no money and they want him on loan, and that's not going to do Arsenal any good at all, getting rid of Bellerin on loan. So they've got to find someone who's going to actually pay some money or get some sort of swap deal for him or other players as well. So I do think Hector will go. I'll be surprised if he's here next season. I think Xhaka, it's looking more and more likely that might happen with Roma. The Lacazette one's it's a tough one. I agree with Adrian. I mean, Lacazette this season, I know he got a lot of criticism, but that conversion rate, it was right up there. He was lethal, like Adrian said. And he certainly, Arsenal had more about him when Lacazette played as a central striker than they did when Auba played as a central striker. You saw some of the goals they scored with him there. You think of those great team goals, the West Brom goal that Saka scored, and Laka was a key to that. The goal Laka scored himself against Sheffield United at Bramall Lane. He's heavily involved in that with the balls around the corner, the hold-up play, bringing others into play. So it's not a foregone conclusion it'll go. It's just that issue. He's only got a year left on his contract. So what are Arsenal going to do? Are you going to give a player who's about, or may even have turned 30 now, a big long-term deal? Or are you going to look to freshen things up if you can get any sort of money for him and bring in a younger striker and go again? So they've got a decision to make with him. Like you touched on Rhys Nelson, for me, he's got to go. I don't know why he stayed in January. He could have gone out on loan. He didn't, and he just wasted 6 months of his career really staying here. And so he needs to go out and play football. We've spoken about Joe Willock, Eddie Nketiah as well. 1 year left on his contract. There are some players. I mean, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Matteo Guendouzi, Lucas Torreira, all of these players. I don't know how Eddie's going to sleep this summer. You look at some of these players, though, Maitland-Niles and Nketiah especially. When I talk about possible swap deals this summer, there is some scope for that. You look at, Arsenal do like Yves Bissouma at Brighton, that other clubs do as well. So I'm not saying Arsenal are going to sign him, but they do like him. He's an option there. If Granit Xhaka goes, they're going to have to bring in a central midfielder, and Bissouma's certainly on that list of potential targets. Ainsley Maitland-Niles could well come into that. You'd think Brighton might well be fairly interested in Ainsley Maitland-Niles or Eddie Nketiah as well. We all know Brighton need a striker in around that penalty area. They were certainly lacking that. It was all they were lacking this season. So I think you're going to see clubs trying to be clever when it comes to getting deals done as well. Norwich, again, Buendia, another player Arsenal really, really like and have on their hit list. Could they be interested in one of these players, Rhys Nelson and Eddie Ainsley? So there's lots of talks to be had rather than just straight cash deals, because I think everyone's going to be struggling. No one's got any money. Everyone's hemorrhaged money last year. So clubs are going to have to be clever when it comes to doing business in the transfer market. And I think Arsenal are going to have to really wheel and deal. And like I say, Eddie's going to be very, very busy.
Can I just ask Charles? I think Arsenal need to shop local, to go to the local sort of supermarket. This is the year. There's no Europe, so somebody like players like Buendia, players like Bissouma, they'd be more willing to. they would love to play for Arsenal. I'm sure of that. But the desperation for European football would surely not be the same for these guys. And I think, you look at Leicester, their recruitment in recent seasons, bringing players out of the Championship or lower Premier League teams, and they're just, and suddenly they're in their national teams. I think that's where Arsenal need to be shopping this summer. There are Premier League proven players out there who would love to join us, and I completely agree. Maitland-Niles and Nketiah and Joe Willock are 3 great carrots. Rhys Nelson as well, 4 great carrots to lure these players. Norwich, for example, have just lost Oliver Skipp. Fantastic influence for them in central midfield. Now, if they see Ainsley Maitland-Niles as that guy, that for me is definitely a deal that we could look to do. But look, that's for Eddie to do. But I really like Buendia and I really like Basuma, and I think they would both improve Arsenal's squad by quite a bit.
I think they would as well. The thing is with Buendia, he was absolutely available for far cheaper last summer, and he's been a player that Arsenal have known about and been looking at for a long time. And it's just another case of maybe sleeping on your hands a little bit in the last couple of windows with certain players that now are going to cost an awful lot more. Like Buendia now is going to be double what you could have picked him up for last summer, and no one took a chance on him, and now you're gonna have to pay an awful lot more to get him.
Yeah, you could argue even selling players. Ainsley Maitland-Niles' stock probably was a lot higher this time last year after the cup final, as than it is now. And you think with Joe Willock, you think, will they make that mistake? I'm going to bring Chloe in a few seconds. So Chloe, just 2 or 3 minute warning for some questions. I've asked a few of them. There was one from Vinny Rias about Martin Odegaard, Charles, and what do you think will happen there? Is it are we going to be out sort of, is he over our budget, or do you think we're sort of looking elsewhere and we'll come back to him maybe later in the summer?
No, they do. They do certainly want him back. Whether you can do it by doing another season-long loan deal, kind of like they did with Danny Ceballos, I think that would be best for Arsenal, to be honest. I'm not sure it's going to take an awful lot of your budget, and you're not going to be able to swap a player with Real Madrid for Martin Odegaard. So you're going to have to splash an awful lot of your money if you're going to bring him back on a permanent basis. And I think that Zidane's gone now, obviously, and Zidane was a key reason why Odegaard wasn't playing at Madrid. And we'll have to wait and see if Ancelotti fancies him or not. He'll certainly go back there for the pre-season, and then decision will be made later on in the window of him. But he is someone that Arsenal want to get back if they can. But how they do it or whether they do it, we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Chloe, would you like to come in and just sort of, I know there's been lots of questions. I've been keeping an eye on them. Should we get through a few?
Yeah, a lot of interest about Arteta, understandably. So Tom is interested to understand whether we think he's too vocal on the sidelines, and does it actually prevent players from expressing themselves? And also, concern that he might be overwhelming players with his instructions about positioning and playing to formation. Amanda's keen to understand whether you think Arteta is the right man to take us forward. Her view is that he probably needs a strong pre-season, get the players that suit his vision, offload the ones that perhaps don't. And John Brennan talking about the chopping and changing format, and is this something that we as Arsenal fans now need to get used to? Potentially, he's picked it up from Guardiola. Or is it simply that he just hasn't found his magic 11 as yet? So I just thought, have a bit of a focus on Arteta and cover off some of those. And then I've got some other questions to come back to as well.
Adrian, do you want
to? Where should we start? What was the first part? Sorry.
Too vocal, is it?
Yeah, so the micromanagement. Yeah, look, personally, only personally, I really didn't like it as a player when the coach was coaching you through the game. But that was just me. I tend to be more of a sort of spontaneous person that wanted to just get on with it rather than being told when to pass it, when to move, when and whatnot. So I think you have to treat players differently. I think he's learning, isn't he? He's still new to the job. He's learning on the job, and I think when he analyses himself, and I'm sure that he will at the moment and throughout the summer, that might be one of the areas he might look at and think, sometimes, shall I say less and give more responsibility to the players? And personally, I think that can be a really positive thing. The reason he's doing it is that they're not doing exactly what he wants them to do. But I think personally, and I think a lot of fans are sort of on board with this viewpoint. Personally, I'd like to see a little bit more spontaneity from the team in possession and slightly less choreographed football in possession. And to do that, you've got to let the players run free. So yeah, hopefully he'll strip it back a little bit. I think it's something he can work on.
Charles, your view on Mikel?
It's a tough one. I think I like Mikel, and I think he's going to be a very, very good coach. And he's someone I always worry. I worry if Arsenal let him go, that he'll go on and be a very good coach somewhere else, and we kind of live to regret it a few years down the line. But he's certainly, like Adrian said, he's learning on the job. He's very inexperienced. He's learning on the job, and he's made some big mistakes. I think he'll look back at the Villarreal semi-final and know that he was a major reason why Arsenal didn't win that semi-final. Certainly with his decisions in the first leg. But I like him. I think we've got to just give him a little bit of time. I hate that word because I know it's the worst thing to say to a football fan, be patient, but I think he will deliver a decent Arsenal side if he can get his own players in. I think he's very, very vocal because he doesn't trust a lot of the players and he has to talk them through the games. And I think if he can get his own players in that he does trust and give them more responsibility, then we possibly won't hear it as much. And he has talked about it before. He said that he realised at times he's needed to quieten it down a little bit. And maybe we're just hearing it more because there's no fans in the stadium as well. And once fans are in the ground, it won't really be so noticeable. So, I think Arsenal needs to stick with him. He has to start next season well. There's no doubt about it, because he couldn't have had any complaints if he'd got sacked this season. He couldn't, missing out on Europe. It's not really acceptable for anyone at a club the size of Arsenal. And so he couldn't have had any complaints. And so he knows he's going to have to start next season well.
Yeah, I think he's some of the movements that he gets the players to do are really sophisticated, and they do create problems for opposition teams. The positional rotation, the overloads that he creates, it's really smart coaching, and in that respect, I think he's excellent. As is the way that he's made us harder to breach. It's just, I don't know. I think he can strip it back and go more to basics. And I know it sounds simplistic, but I think it's the football next season. I'd like to see a little bit more of an emphasis on getting players into the box and getting into areas, the most dangerous areas, with greater frequency. At the moment, we're funneling so much of our play wide, and we're creating some lovely patterns and some nice overloads. But ultimately, when the ball goes in the box, there's often just one there. And I think that's where we need to improve on hugely. And that won't take much. It really won't take much. It's probably getting a box-to-box guy into the team and just saying, get into the area, like a Thomas Souček does for West Ham United, just getting somebody in there and encouraging players, or demanding, actually, not just encouraging, demanding that players make more runs in beyond the striker. So much of our play this season was in front of teams. Yeah. Especially at Emirates Stadium. It's demanding that players bust a gut to get in beyond. And what we saw in the last few games was exactly that. So that was encouraging. But it's what needs to be done from Mikel's point of view is actually to recognise the simple things and to work on those, in my opinion.
Yeah. We do want if people have got questions, they can raise their hand and I will bring a couple in. It'll be nice to hear some new voices. But Chloe, I know there's a few other topics. Do you want to quickly cover those off?
Yes. So obviously we've had some discussion about, potential player moves, but there's quite a lot of interest on the chat about Aubameyang. And in terms of, he's a very highly paid player. There's a feeling from Mukhtar that he doesn't really know his position. Be interested in your views on that. And also, are you aware of any, sort of under the radar rumours that we haven't touched on yet that perhaps you could share with us in terms of, who we might be wanting to make a play for in the market this summer?
That for me?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, starting with Orba. I just think you're not going to be able to shift Orba. I think Arsenal are going to. They will start next season with Aubameyang at the club. I'd be very surprised if he goes. And I don't. He was poor this season. There's no doubt about it. His performances weren't great. And when he's not scoring goals, he's not really giving much else to the team. Aubameyang, that's where you sort of, when you compare him with Lacazette. But I wouldn't be writing Aubameyang off just yet. You know, I wouldn't be, if he goes on and scores 25 goals next season, I wouldn't be surprised about that at all, because he's still a very, very good striker. He's just had a difficult season, and everyone's had a difficult season. In terms of any under the radar rumours, nothing that I'd be able to really sort of publicly say. No, everything that I've heard so far that I would be confident enough to put out there, I've put out there. So no, there's not really any under the radar bubbling around at the moment that I'd be confident enough to actually put a name to.
Okay, Chloe, any more? Oh, go on, Adrian.
Thank you.
I was just going to say on Aubameyang, it's a big. It's right. Charles is right. You're not going to shift him really. So then it's how do you use him? Yeah. How do you use him? Yeah, and it is a real quandary, and it's a difficult situation because you don't want him blocking off necessarily the progress of a Saka down the left hand side or a Martinelli, and then we've talked about Lacazette. We were probably better when Lacazette was leading the line. One thing that Mikel hasn't done yet is try two up front. I'm not saying Lacazette and Aubameyang, but Martinelli and one or the other might be something that's worth looking at, particularly if we play three at the back, which I think is something we should look at doing a bit more often, certainly in the bigger games. It's kind of proven, isn't it? We did it at Chelsea. Yeah. We did it the season before. I think that particular shape was maybe a little bit underused this season. I looked actually at the formations that all the teams used over the course of this campaign. There was only one manager, Hassan Huttels, that had the same system for every single game.
Oh, wow.
And the vast majority had a number of, the most used formation was rarely over 50%. So I think it's a trend across the board that managers these days flip between a 4-2-3-1 and a back three, and they go to 4-4-2. It's not just Mikel Arteta that flits, but one thing he hasn't done is go with two up front. Not really, and I think that it's something worth looking at, because when you've got two goal scorers in one spot, two highly paid goal scorers in one spot, it's worth exploring maybe.
Chloe?
So I've got a couple to finish off. So this one's specifically for you, Adrian. Mark Stewart remembers a cold night on the North Bank in the mid-90s playing Wimbledon, and he thinks that you were playing at that game, and he wants to check that his memory is correct and whether you've got any memories in particular to share. And then to the both of you, Melvin is interested as to who you would say would be your player of the season, and what's your favourite goal that Arsenal scored.
Adrian, let's get your one. Do you remember it?
Yeah, it was one of my games. Yeah, one of my 9. We got beat actually, so it doesn't have that many happy memories. I remember being scared in the tunnel because they were screaming and shouting, and Vinnie Jones was rock hard, and not scared, but you know what I mean. I was looking at them thinking, "Oh, blimey, this is going to be tough," and it was. But yeah, it was a hard game. But what made me chuckle was afterwards, the newspapers, because I think Vinnie Jones had been sent off the week before, or not too long before, and they did a Vinnie watch, and in the Vinnie watch, it said Vinnie Jones was upended by the youngster Clarke, and he hit the deck hard or something like that. And I made sure that cutting was kept, because I mean, anyone that ever saw me play knows I didn't really hit anyone hard. So yeah, I was quite chuffed about that.
There was a tongue-in-cheek one from Paul Bates, who said for Adrian as well, John Jensen scored on your Premier League debut. Given his shooting skills, because it took him 97 games to score, do you think Thomas Partey is going to take as long as him? I think it's tongue-in-cheek.
It is. Well, the last game he was quite good, wasn't he? A bit more measured.
He had one,
but yeah, his shooting has been a shocker, hasn't it? You watch him go next year. I reckon he's going to score a few goals next season.
Pre-season helps. Charles, quickly, player of the year, best goal, just very quickly, then come to Adrian.
Player of the year, Bukayo Saka. I think it has to be. Absolutely carried the team for most of it. 100% my player of the season. Goal of the season, I was thinking about this the other day, and I think that I loved Laka's goal at Sheffield United, the first goal, the team move and everything about that. So I think I'd just about give it to that one.
Adrian?
Saka for sure. but a great full debut season for Kieran Tierney. Actually, it was his second season, wasn't it? So no, but he had a great season.
He had injuries in both seasons.
Yeah, can't remember all the goals, but the one at West Brom, really stands out as the team move, the up, back and through with Smith Rowe on the overlap and squaring it for Bukayo Saka. And obviously in the same game, Kieran Tierney, I loved his individual goal. Where he basically just went on a mazy down the left. But yeah, we had a few good ones, but not enough.
Pepe scored 5 or 6 beauties this season. Pepe, really, you sort of forget some of the Europa League goals. He scored absolute blinders.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Pepe's that left foot is dynamite, and I think we've got ourselves a bit of a trademark finish as well, haven't we? Driving in from the right, and that's probably why he should most of the time be on the right. It's because he's got that ability to just curl it into the far corner. He just does it in his sleep. What we need is maybe a slightly more dynamic right back because we've been a bit lopsided, let's be honest, with Tierney and Saka down that left hand side. I think with Pepe, when he comes in, you've got to have that option wide, and I expect us to sign an athletic, dynamic, young, hungry fullback.
Perfect. Chloe, it might come back to you if we get some time. Let's get some people in. So, Oliver, would you like to unmute yourself and give us your view? Ask your question. Yeah, go for it. We can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Go for it. Welcome. Yes, Oliver, we can hear you. Go on. Okay, we'll try and come back to Oliver later. Ian, if you want to unmute yourself, welcome.
Hang on.
There you go. Yeah, we can hear you. Go for it.
I sent this actually as a message just now as well, but good evening, guys, by the way. I'm enjoying this, really good.
Good evening.
One of the things I'd like to ask, I've got 3 things on the agenda. One's deliberately asking Adrian. I used to be a regular contributor, a phone caller in to the clock end. I was known as Ian in Bridgewater. I came on about every other week, and I was moaning about everything. I was one of the whinging gooners, Anyway, I just wondered when it was going to come back, if it's going to come back. If not, why not?
Yeah.
Go on, Adrian.
Oh, has he gone? No, he won't come back. Look, I love the show, but look, sensible. Unfortunately, things just got a little bit too toxic, I think, and it got to the stage where we had to be really careful, about taking certain callers because the views were so strong. So look, I think it was a good show, and I loved presenting it, and I loved talking honestly with journalists were on it like Charles. It was cracking, but I can't see it coming back, unfortunately. Just have to look at Arsenal's social media timelines. You can't unfortunately open things up anymore like you used to because there's just too much poison out there. And when you're on a club channel, you can't have that, unfortunately. It's such a shame because there are so many sensible fans out there that want to have a normal debate and have a proper show and engage, but unfortunately it's the vocal sort of ones that spoil it for everyone else.
Ian, you had a follow-up. Do you want to?
Yeah, follow-up. Two of the players that I was surprised you didn't mention, and I'm sure it was an oversight on one of them, but one of the guys that I was really pleased he signed a new contract was Folarin Balogun, and I was really disappointed at the end of last season that he didn't get at least a place on the bench, maybe 10 minutes at the end of the game, because when he did play in the Europa League earlier on in the season, he scored, and he scored some good goals. And I thought, here's a player, we need to get this guy in the groove for next season. He's a player for the future, and he's really exceptional. And I'm surprised that he's still waiting for his Premier League debut. And I'm wondering what you think next season, whether he'll get in the team on the bench, or whether he'll go out on loan. I fear somehow he might go out on loan, but I hope not.
Adrian, Charles?
Very quickly, Mo El-Neni, who I think always when he came in the side was very steady, very intelligent, very hardworking. And he's a player that I quite like, is Mo. And
Cool. Ian, let's get through them a bit, just because we've got a few more hands up. We've only got about 10 minutes left. So cheers. Thanks for the questions, Ian. Adrian, so that Balogun.
Yeah. Obviously, he's going to be a part of it. He's a key part of our future, we hope. I think Eddie Nketiah potentially going, just he fills that slot, doesn't he, as the backup striker. Now, with no Europa League football, it's bad news for him. What's best for him? Is it being on the bench, getting the odd 5 minutes here and there, or is it going out on loan? I suspect he might be loaned out. Mo Oneni, keep him for sure as a squad player, but and he's done well this season. But if we're going to have aspirations to move forward as a team, then that's his position really as a squad man.
Charles, you on those?
I agree exactly what Adrian said. I think with Balogun, it's tough. I think if Arsenal were in the Conference League, then that could have been, gold for Balogun. But the fact he's not now, what's he going to get more out of this season? 5 or 10 minutes here and there at the end of a game, or going out and playing full season out on loan? I think I wouldn't be surprised if he goes out on loan now that they've got him secured to a long-term contract. And Elneny, I mean, he's a very good squad player, does the job, and if he's still around, then great. He certainly had a decent season, Elneny.
On Elneny, there's a few questions about if Arsenal's transfer sort of business, the African nations, the Cup of Nations will play a part, because obviously if Granit goes, you've got Partey, you've got Elneny, and some of the rumours, obviously, you could potentially lose your midfield. Do you think that will be part of their thinking?
I think it has to be part of the thinking, but I think you can't really shape your transfer plan around a 6-week period in one part of the season. So I don't think that they're not going to not sign a player because he might be going away in the African nations in halfway through the season. But it will certainly have to be part of the plan, because you don't want to suddenly lose 3 or 4 of your midfield players for 6 weeks. So they have to have some sort of backup option for it that period.
Yeah. Raheem Sterling, Jeffrey Silman has asked about. There's been a couple of rumours there. He's 26, which is, actually should be in his peak. Obviously, he's worked with Mikel before. Charles, anything there, or is this just City trying to get him out and trying to just put him out there a little bit?
I'd be stunned, just finances wise. I mean, how are Arsenal going to get a deal done for Raheem Sterling? Wages and transfer fee. Again, they're not going to be swapping players to Manchester City for Sterling. It'd have to be an out and out fee. And you're talking, I know he had a bad end to the season, but you're talking 60-80 million pounds for Raheem Sterling. I'd be stunned, really, really surprised if that one came to pass, I have to say.
I'd take him.
Yeah, I'd take him. I'd take him as well.
Adrian, one for you about captaincy from Trevor Smith. Obviously, we've talked a lot about Oba and not quite knowing where he fits in, got to make it work because no one's going to take him on his wages. We maybe look better with Lacazette. So what do you do about the captaincy, obviously? And then, there's been a few questions about leadership generally, with David Luiz gone, Granit Xhaka potentially going. There is a real, it seems like we've been talking about leadership for 10 years, but at the moment, what do you do with that captaincy? Do you keep it as it is, or? I
think, it's hard to take it away from someone that's still at the club, isn't it? It's, I don't think Oba's done anything to lose it. Personally, I've always felt, and I probably said it at the time, that there are other, players that I would have put ahead of him as captain material. Certainly Kieran Tierney just ticks most of the boxes for me, and I would certainly have him as the understudy. So whenever Oba isn't around, then Kieran Tierney is the man with the armband. But in terms of leadership, I get it, but it's down to players to show leadership and personal responsibility themselves. If Saka and Smith Rowe can come into the team, and just drive them on and be absolutely the fulcrum of everything good that the team does, that's leadership, isn't it? So if they can do it, then everybody can do it. And I'm just looking for a bit more of it from more individuals around the team. I think in a lot of our home games this season, when it's been a bit flat and a bit quiet and ponderous, we've let games drift, and that's not a good reflection, on the team. And I think that needs to change moving forwards. And sometimes it's just 1 or 2 new faces. Hopefully there'll be 4 or 5 new faces. they change the dynamic. They, especially if you get winners, you get players that have been there and done it, and they've been successful. Then and been in different dressing rooms where it is more vocal. Bring those into the club to change that mindset, I guess.
Yeah. I'm going to let Paul in. Paul, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, mate?
Yeah, hi there.
Hiya. Welcome.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, I hit the wrong button.
Ask a question anyway. Come on, give us your best question.
I've got a question anyway. Just rolls on from the previous chat. Smith Rowe and Saka, you're suggesting that they might be captaincy material, but they're not the right area of the pitch, are they? I still think your captain has got to be at the midfield, certainly, central defence, ideally.
I mean, I wasn't saying that they're captaincy material. I'm just saying that leadership, they showed leadership. And I think that's what more players should do within the team. I'll be honest, I don't really care who's the captain. Our captain has mainly not played in the last 10 years. It's not that big a deal. But personally, if it was me, I would give it to Tierney.
Fair enough. Charles, any sort of view on captain leadership?
I agree. I think Kieran Tierney is certainly Arsenal's captain in waiting. It's just a case of when he gets it rather than if. I think Rob Holding as well, again, in this sort of behind closed doors atmosphere, you really hear the talkers. And I know Holding gets some grief, which I think is pretty unfair a lot of the time as well, because I think Holding's had a very good season. His stats back that up. But he really drives the team forward, Rob Holding. He does not stop talking the whole way through the game. And I think he's certainly he's got a lot of leadership about him that maybe goes a little bit unnoticed. I'm not saying he should be Arsenal's long-term captain, but he certainly is a leader in that dressing room, and that's been really apparent during the last the behind closed doors games.
Yeah. Charles, I'm just going to do a few quick fire ones. We've only got about 6 or 7 minutes left. Steve Bold, obviously, the news came out about him sort of moving on a week or two ago, just before the Brighton game. What are your thoughts there, and what do you sort of know? What do you know sort of what happened there, and just general views on that?
I think they just wanted they wanted a change. There's quite a few new young players coming into the under-23 setup, sort of being promoted full-time basis this summer. You look at Charlie Patino, Mari Hutchinson, Marcelo Flores, those sort of players who are making a step up now, and the club have got high hopes for those players. And I think they just want, it sounds a bit harsh and boldy, but a younger, more forward-thinking type coach to really guide them over the next couple of years. And performances weren't great this year for the under-23. A lot of that has to be said, that a lot of the younger players were sent out on loan. It was a different type of approach for the 23s this season that we've seen previously from Arsenal. And so Bold did have his team stripped, and basically a whole load of new players come in that he had to work with. So it was a bit unfair on that part. But I think it just comes to the end of the cycle, to be honest, in that we all know Bold is an absolute legend, 3 decades worth of service at the club, but they just felt it was time to move on, and someone else needed to come in and take this sort of new young crop that's coming through now.
Yeah. Chaz, who asked the question, completely agrees with you, calling him a legend. We talked about outgoings. We didn't mention Willian, which I think we're just all forgetting a little bit about him, Charles. But obviously came in on big wages. It's not going to be easy to get rid of him. But do you think he is? Do you think we will get rid of him? I
actually wouldn't be surprised from what I'm hearing. I wouldn't be surprised. He's not going to go back to Chelsea. I saw those reports, and that's just not going to happen. But it sounds like there is potentially a willingness there to get something done this summer. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal end up just giving him away to get him off the wage bill, because it's been such a disaster of a signing. I don't think they're going to get a big transfer fee in, but it seems like it's something that could happen, which maybe sort of 3 or 4 months ago I'd have said no chance. But certainly the noises I'm hearing, that there is an opportunity that both parties think that it might be best if they sort of part ways this summer, if a decent club can be found for him.
And Charles, just quickly, one from Billy about pre-season generally and Emirates Cup and what's going to happen. And there's been a bit of talk about obviously tours probably aren't going to happen, but what do you know about pre-season at the moment? He's also said he's a subscriber of your YouTube channel and can highly recommend it. Very nice of him, isn't it?
Thank you very much. It's interesting. Pre-season this summer, they got a couple of weeks away. They've got a week in Scotland, obviously Hibs and Rangers. They've got a couple of games at the Emirates. We've seen the sort of London Cup that's going to be happening. Arsenal are going to be playing, playing away at Spurs, and it's home to Chelsea, isn't it, at the Emirates? And I think there's going to be one other pretty high-profile Emirates game as well this summer. I'm not sure who that's going to be against yet, but that is in the offing, and they might have a week in America. The last time I spoke to someone about it, obviously there's a lot to sort out if you're going to go away at the moment. So that was potentially on the agenda if they could get it sorted, but if not, they might have to stay closer to home rather than go to America. But we could have a couple of good Emirates games to look forward to. It's not going to be an Emirates Cup. I think there might be some sort of game in association with Emirates put on. I think that's how it was described to me, but it's not going to be an Emirates Cup with 4 teams, trophy on the line, that sort of thing. But it might be a pretty high profile game.
Cool. And Adrian, just on sort of Bukayo Saka in the Euros, what are your sort of thoughts? Will he get much sort of game time there or not?
Probably not, but I think I agree with the selection. I think that Gareth Southgate is really sensible to bring him in because he's a manager's dream. I mean, and I don't think he'll be one of the 3 that's left out of the matchday squad either, because if you have Bukayo Saka on the bench, you've got options aplenty, haven't you? We know he can play literally anywhere, can't he? And it's not an issue. So I wish him well. It'd be a great experience for him. Working with a different manager, working with those excellent players that England have got, can only bode well, I think, for his development moving forward. So really excited. I would still like to see him tried out in a more central role. I think that that's something that we might see more of in the future. For me, he could do what Ødegaard was doing to some degree, potentially, but we know that he's excellent flying down the wings. So
excellent everywhere, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Top.
I want to. We've got a few minutes. I just want to spend the last 2 or 3 minutes talking about the Euros. I think we've got Peter. Is Peter around back? If you want to sort of show yourself, Peter. So Peter's an AST member, obviously an overseas member, which we're really proud to have. And Peter, a question for you that I just thought of now. Obviously, with the Euros coming, you're from Denmark, so you're in the Euros. You're going to be enjoying it. How does it work for you? Do you sort of watch Denmark and then you still want to watch the Arsenal players? I know there aren't many Arsenal players in there. Probably Granit Xhaka is probably the only one starting. But how does it work for you in the Euros?
Well, exactly as you said there, because obviously I'm going to watch Denmark and rooting for the Danish team, but I'm always interested in watching the Arsenal players, and usually there are much more than there are this year. But with Saka and the English team, that was an improvement and made the English games more interesting from my perspective.
Yeah, fair enough. And Charles, what does the Euros sort of mean for you, work-wise, and what do you do? And is it sort of, do you cover games? Do you cover them obviously remotely, or is it a summer off? Just
not much. Yeah, not much for me.
Yeah.
Had it gone on as normal last season, then it would have been a very busy summer because I was doing all the England games. But it's all sort of changed this summer, and I've got loads of stuff on with family stuff. So I'm going to be more of a fan this summer watching the Euros, which I have to admit I'm very, very happy about. So not too much work for me, just plenty of enjoyment and hopefully a fair bit of beer.
Yeah, fair enough. And Adrian, what about you? You sort of you still do some work across the board, don't you?
Yeah, I'll be doing some bits and bobs around the Euros, but I'm not chasing work particularly this summer. It's been a bit of a slog, let's be honest. I think for all of us over the last 12 months, it's been pretty brutal, and I've not really stopped. And I think it's a good chance to be a fan. And look, I'm rooting for England big time. Yeah, I think we've got a great squad of players. Just not sure about Gareth Southgate. I just don't think he's the best tactician. I think there's a lot better in-game managers than Gareth, but I desperately hope he proves me wrong and steers us to glory. But
what's your prediction there? Semi-final, final, winning it, not winning it? What's your, both of you? Well, Adrian first.
I've tipped up Spain actually. I got a little sneaky feeling for Spain. Got a very smart manager in Luis Enrique, but it's the second round. That's the last 16. England should cruise through the group. Then they'll play the runner-up of the group of death, which is probably going to be France, Portugal, or Germany. it's a 50-50 game, isn't it? You know, win that, I think we could go all the way, but we could easily get beat there.
Charles?
I think the Wembley thing is key. Obviously, we've got a good chance of playing a lot of games at Wembley, all the group games, a couple of the knockout games as well, semi-final, final. So it's basically a home tournament for us, and that is going to give us more an advantage than we normally have. And I kind of agree with Adrian. I think it's a hell of a lot of talent in that squad. Certainly going forward, attacking wise, a hell of a lot of talent. I think Maguire being fit is going to be key as well. I think if he's not fit, then that might be an issue. I find it difficult to see past France. Their squad is just. I looked at their under-21 squad, and I was like, oh my God, that would win a lot of games it seems.
I think we've just it's amazing how the Wi-Fi goes near the end.
Firing and there's no big arguments in the squad or infighting or anything like that, which, to be honest, Benzema coming back might do. But yeah, I think France are my winners if I had to put money on it.
Yeah, perfect. Right, guys, I think we're out of time. Covered a lot in that. I feel we could have probably done another half an hour easily. But like to thank you guys, Adrian, Charles, for spending sort of an hour of your time, especially on a nice day like this. I'm sure you probably wanted to be elsewhere, but thank you for fulfilling your commitment to us. I think we really enjoyed it. Lots of nice comments coming in saying thank you to you. Of course, thank you to all of our members that have turned up today. You know, we had hundreds here sort of watching this. So we're really, really proud to have you, happy to have you. Those watching on the recording, hope you enjoyed it as well. We haven't quite planned our next event yet, but we will be doing something. We'll probably have to look at the Euros kind of calendar as well, just to avoid big games, obviously, because we all want to sort of watch the football. But we'll certainly be doing a couple of events in the summer, and then obviously ramp it up again, sort of in the new season. So once again, thank you. Stay safe. Hopefully, if you are on half term with your kids, enjoy it. If not, just enjoy the weather. Cheers, guys. Bye.
See you, everyone.